All right, welcome everyone. My name is Jan Lehman, for those of you that don't know me. And with me is my dear friend, Nancy Krushke, and our Microsoft training extraordinaire. And for those of you, it looks like we've got some new faces and some repeat customers on the call, which is fabulous. So for the new folks, just so you know, we have been doing these webinars for, it looks like 18 months. And the whole objective is really helping companies understand the power of technology that they're probably already paying for that can solve some of their most pressing business issues and increase productivity. So we're super excited about having the sessions. If today we're going to be talking about a Teams communication policy, and Nancy's going to enter into chat a bunch of links. If you're interested in any of our past recordings about the different 365 apps, you can go out and check out on our website or to our YouTube channel and find those recordings. If you're interested in making sure you don't miss any future webinars coming up, sign up for our newsletter so you'll get a notification about that. And generally the way we structure this is we try to do kind of a deep dive, provide content at the beginning, and then open it up for Q&A versus having it be interactive throughout. So if people only have about half hour to join us, they can get the content. So going in, let's see, for next month, the topic is actually be around, go ahead, Nance, and switch.
Oh, sorry.
Oh. Yeah, thank you. So next month, it's going to be on eliminating information silos and using Microsoft Lists. So that'll be a really interesting one. SharePoint has so much power to it. It's one of the tools we feel is significantly underutilized within 365. So I'm going to give a little background and then turn the reins over to Nancy. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, and I feel like the thing I hear a lot from clients is, man, what's going on? Like 10 years ago, I used to be organized. And so we like to give a little perspective as to what's changing in the world. So we're going to share with you a study from Deloitte and Consulting. I have a lot of respect for Deloitte. And they're saying that we're moving from a traditional organizational structure in the red box to a social enterprise. And this is really what's been evolving over the last 10 years or so. And what that means is on the x-axis across the bottom, it means that people used to work very independently, but now technology has allowed them to automate and streamline. And so they can now step forward and work on more complex issues. And in doing so, they're typically working in a network of teams. And the same is true on the y-axis, that companies have solved a lot of the issues within the four walls of the business. And now they can really work with suppliers, vendors, and customers to solve issues. And so lucky for us, Microsoft 365 and Google, and a lot of the tech companies have really kept up with that in creating the technology that we're now experimenting with today. So these are a lot of the issues. Some of these issues have been around for a while, but we're finding that they're exasperated with being in this more complex network of teams kind of environment. And I'm excited today that we're going to be talking about communication. Communication, there's so many layers to it, and we're going to even just touch on some, but not all the aspects of how you can improve communication in your organization. But it's the number one issue typically we hear from our clients that they're struggling with is how to communicate better and effectively across the organization. And lucky for us, a lot of the newer technologies are in the cloud. So right now, this is a statistic about what the current state of mind is for most employees, that most are really demanding and wanting either hybrid or remote work. And so having cloud-based solutions definitely accommodates that setup. So again, super lucky that we've got these new technologies given where we are today. There's lots of great statistics out there about 365. We have yet to help a client leverage 365 that hasn't been completely thrilled with it. These are just some of the statistics, and there's a lot more out there. I think my favorite is clients are often saying just by moving the internal conversation out of email and putting it into the Teams environment, they have less meetings, and that one makes me very happy. So there's more white space on the calendar. So I'm actually going to kick off this one. Some of you have attended presentations of mine in the past, so you might have seen this, but in case we've got some new people here that haven't seen it, I'm going to share with you just a little grid we put together just as a starting point to have a conversation with clients. It doesn't mean you would need to adopt what's actually in here. This is just a framework to start putting your head around it. But one of the things that Nancy and I feel very strongly about is that everybody needs to have kind of a macro organizational strategy. Like, what tools do I use when, providing some broader perspective, especially when you're in a transition phase of moving into and bringing in new tools. So that's what we're really touching on today. This particular grid, the way you read it, is the first line. I introduced the word emergency because what we're finding is that people are using very disruptive communication tools all the time, even when it's not necessarily that urgent. And the problem, what we're seeing in companies, is everybody has a different definition of what's urgent. So we've introduced the word emergency, and what we're saying is if it's an emergency, then your response time is now. So, and if it's urgent, maybe urgent means that it's 24 hours or 12 hours. Nancy, you can go ahead and click again, or can I? But you kind of say, get a common language within your organization, like what exactly is an emergency and what exactly is urgent? What's the response time in those particular situations? And then the next line is, then what's the right tool to use? So generally our suggestion is don't use disruptive communication tools like popping into somebody's office, chatting, texting, calling, if it's really not that important, if it's not an emergency, unless you know for sure that person's available and interested. But typically you're disrupting them and causing them to lose time, which we don't like as productivity consultants. And then, so the default is really start to use more of a passive communication tool if it's not that important. There's definitely still a time and a place for face-to-face conversations, but just to keep this graph simple, it's just sort of like, don't use disruptive tools unless you know it's that important to interrupt that person. And then at the bottom, one of the things we noticed is that the subject line of emails and the subject line in Teams post is really underutilized. It's a perfect place to put the deadline for this communication so somebody knows, do I need to read this right now or can it wait? So just wanted to give you a little bit of that background. Nancy's going to kind of refer back to it in her talk as well. So, all right, Nancy, you're on.
All right, better unmute myself. So great. So let's move forward with what are all the communication tools, and Jan touched on many of them. Focusing, looking at the 365 apps that are available. We're going to talk a little bit about Outlook, but mostly focus on Microsoft Teams and incorporating that into the communication policy or guidelines, similar to how Jan talked about it. So our traditional communications, right? We have our email messages, we have our text messages, we have our phone calls, and this is the drop by in the office. And these days it might not be physical in the office. It might be, you know, doing a Zoom meeting or pinging them and saying, hey, let's talk right now. And so those are kind of our traditional methods. With Teams, in addition to the four, what I've called traditional methods, you have a bunch, as you can see here, of ways that you can communicate inside of Teams. There's chat, which is personal. There's replies to different conversations. There's likes, reactions, channel posts, you know, personal mentions, channel mentions, tag mentions, Teams mentions. And it's like, so I know what you're probably all thinking. Okay, Nance, I already am overloaded with all the notifications I already received. And you just showed me, I don't know, I didn't count 20 other ones. But the goal for the Teams notifications is to keep everyone informed and up to date so that no one is accidentally left out of the conversation. And the good news with Teams notifications, unlike some of the traditional ones, is that you get to customize when and how you see each of the different types of Teams notifications. Also, when you think about the Teams notifications and communication in general, there's two kind of distinguishing factors. And Jan touched on the second piece of this, which is the urgency, which I'll get to in a minute. But the first one is, who are you addressing it to? Is it to just one person, one-on-one? Is it to a specific role? So it's all the managers or it's all the leads on a particular project or in this department. Is it a work stream? So here's project X and everybody on project X or Y needs to be informed about something. An area of interest. Many of our clients are creating a Microsoft team and the channels are different areas of interest. So maybe in the past, it might have been a Yammer group, and now it's a team channel. And hey, are you interested in bicycling? So here's people that do cycling. Are you interested in, I don't know, pick the thing, yoga, exercise? Are you a particular ethnicity? A lot of companies have, you know, an African American or new employees to help pull people together. Or is it a notification that goes into a particular team that's set up, whether it's your department or a project team, depending on how you've set those up. So think about who is it addressed to. And then also think about what's the response time, as Jan just kind of talked about, right? She said, hey, if it's an emergency or if it's urgent, so it's it needs to be responded to, and it's a high response time or a really short response time, where does that go? Where do you put the notification or the message, the conversation? And then when you're receiving those types, how do you set up your notifications to ping you? Medium, or is it low? Don't need to respond, or, you know, very low response. I can take my time, think about it, come back to it. So 2 ways to think about all of those team notifications. So I'm going to go ahead, feel free, and I see Jan posted it over in chat. If you have questions as we go through this, go ahead and post them, and we'll come back to them once I get through all of this. So I'm going to start with personal. When we send personal messages, those are chats. Our chats in Teams are like if you use an instant message program inside of your company. Skype for Business, Jabber, there's so many that are out there. So your chat. Also kind of think of chats as like a text message. But one of the advantages is you're getting it out of text on your personal phone, right? And now it's getting into a company. So you're not having to manage business stuff on your personal. It's all staying in a company app, which is Teams. And then personal at mentions. So in Teams, you get the ability to at mention a specific person. So if I at mention Jan because I want her to review the PowerPoint for today's session, that's going to ping her a little bit differently than if I just do a post and I say, look at the PowerPoint. She may miss that because I didn't personally at mention her because I want her to take action. The personal replies to conversations. So if I start a conversation and I want to be in the loop of all the replies because I've asked people to review something or I've asked a question, I might want those to be a little higher response, right? And how am I going to get pinged for those? So inside of Microsoft Teams, when you go to settings, you'll see there's an option for notifications. And the 2 main ones we're addressing or I'm focusing on today are the Teams and the channel notifications, and then the chat, which are your messages, your at mentions, and reactions. So I just got done talking about the chat, at mentions, and replies. And so what are our options here? For the chats, we have a couple of options. So those are those one-on-one. It could be a small group chat. It's not in the team. It's not in a team. It's not in a channel. It's just the chat. And I can choose the banner. The banner is the pop-up down in the right-hand side of your screen. So if those are ones you're like, I want to see those, and it's okay that I'm interrupted for those, then do banner. If you're like, you know, I can come back to them, then turn them off, and they'll still show up in your activity feed or in your chat. You'll be able to go and see that they're there and that you haven't read them yet. So those are the options for the chat. In the personal at mentions, you have 2 options, banner and feed, or only in the feed. So again, you know, Jan and I really like, do you need the interruption? And if it is a company policy that, yes, anytime you're at mention, we do want you to be interrupted because that we want to draw your attention. We want you to look at it sooner than later, then do banner and feed. If you're going to set up the policy and the guidelines for the company to only show in the feed, that's fine. So then just pick your option. Same with replies to conversations I started. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Is feed the activities area?
Yep. Feed is the activity feed.
So
if
when
we
you're
look on the left-hand side, if you're in Microsoft Teams, typically we have chat, then we have activity. Can't think of what the third one is. And then it's Teams. I think there's one more up there.
Okay. So you're in the activity. Perfect.
Yep. And so in the replies I started, you'll see that they did add, they put the at mention ones, the banner feed, and only feed, and then the off that they also put over here. I always kind of chuckle. It's like, well, why is an off an option on all of them? But maybe someday they'll all be a little bit more consistent. So those are the personal ones. And typically, if you're sending a personal message, it might be something that needs a higher and a shorter response time. Next, let's take a look at the team mentions. So not only can you post in a team, but you can @mention the team. And that, again, typically, if you're going to @mention the team in your post, means, hey guys, this post is something that we would like you, or I would like you to look at sooner than later. So the team @mentions mean probably a higher or shorter response time, and we want people to look at it. And so our options, again, there as we go into settings and notifications, are banner and feed, only feed, and off. In addition to our personal @mentions and our team @mentions, we can also @mention a particular channel, and we can @mention a tag. So let's talk about channels first. So a channel @mention is, I have a team that's all company, and one of the channels is HR. And in the HR channel, I want to @mention HR, and we want to make sure, hey, we want you to look at this because it's open enrollment coming up. And so if you @mention the channel, again, you get the option banner and feed, feed or off. Tags. I don't know if in any of the other webinars I talked about tags specifically, but tags gives you another way to group people that are part of that team. So for instance, I just mentioned an all company team. In the all company team, we have managers, and we also have all these different departments in the company. So Microsoft has now given us a way that we can go into all the members of that specific team, and we can add another layer of not only do they belong to all company, but they are also managers. They are also part of the marketing team or the sales team or the design team. And so when I @mention managers, that is what that tag mention is referring to. And again, you'll see with the @mention, the tag @mention, it is the same as the personal @mention. And there actually isn't a separate spot to change that. So when you do the @mentions, it applies to the personal mentions, and the tag mentions all follow this.
Hey, Nance, I'm going to interrupt real quick. So for some of the new people on the call, we certainly have no idea of knowing your experience level with Teams. So just soak this all in and go back and watch like some of the previous videos about Teams and channels and posts and all that kind of stuff. If this is lingo that doesn't make sense to you, and you'll get a better idea. But for right now, just kind of soak up and get an understanding of what's possible.
Okay, so those are all the ones that typically you want a shorter response. It's a higher level of response time. At least that's kind of our take on it, is you might want to have those pop into your feed or your banner and maybe not turn them off. The second grouping is medium. Probably only want to show these in the feed. So these are replies to conversations that I replied to. So Jan did a conversation, I replied to it, and I can decide, do I want to be notified, actively notified, or do I want to have those be a little quieter notification? The others are channel posts and replies. So inside of each of those teams and the channels, so that you have your choice in each of the channels of how you want to be notified there. So with the conversations that I replied to, do I want to keep seeing those in my feed, or do I want to turn them off? It's like, yeah, maybe I need to see them, maybe I don't. And the same with your channel posts and replies. So do I want them off or in the banner feed or only show? So medium would be select the only show in feed, because then you're going to look at them when you take that break. Just like Jan and I talk about scheduling time to review and process your email messages, During that same time is when you would look at your activity feed inside of Teams so that you have a earmarked a spot in your calendar that you know, hey, I'm going to go look at those ones that aren't as of high importance and see what people have been chatting about. And then the third grouping are, they're low, can't take my time responding to this, or it doesn't even require a response. And those are the likes and the reactions and the missed activity. So I want to talk about the likes and reactions. One of the things that I encourage my clients, and I think Jan does too with Teams, is that if Jan did a post and I didn't need to do anything to it, that she would like me to react to it so that she knows that I have seen it. That is her indicator that Nancy has seen the message that she posted. And many clients, as part of their communication policy or guideline, they say, hey guys, if you read or when you read that post in that team and in that channel, go ahead and react to it so that we know that you have seen it. Now, in regards to the pop-up for the notification, again, you see you have the three options. Definitely, because it's low or no response needed for that, I would turn the likes and reactions off so you're not constantly getting like, oh, what is that? And it's like, oh, they just liked it. I'm like, does it matter? So something to pay attention to. Now, the missed activity feed, where this comes into play, is that if you have not seen those activity feeds that have come in, you're going to get an email message. And so some people say, oh, great. Now, not only am I getting emails from all of the people in my company, but now I'm getting emails from Teams. And so you do have the option to say, you know what? I do not need an email from Teams to tell me to go look at my activity because I'm going to do it. So turn that off. Now, I do have, for instance, this as soon as possible on for the team that I belong to with Jan, because I am not in her team all the time. I'm in my team, but not her team. And so that sends me an email and says, hey, Jan is trying to get a hold of you over in the CTC tenant. And so I like those for teams that are not within my company. And Jan and I have two different companies. But you can still choose. It doesn't need to be as soon as possible. It could be every 10 minutes, it would check and send me one, every hour, 8 hours daily. So that would be like a daily digest. And then again, internally, I would potentially turn those off because what do you need them if you are scheduling time to actively, consciously look at your email and actively, consciously look at the activity that you haven't seen in Microsoft Teams. Okay, why aren't you clicking? So next actions. That was a lot. Whew, I don't know about you, but that just kind of tired me right out because there are so many there. And it's like, what do I want to do? And where do I want them to show up? And so, I really encourage that you don't make this decision unilaterally on your own for yourself, but that the company takes a look at it and helps give you guidance of what types of communication happen in what way. So determine what are we using traditional tools, which is the phone call, the email, the text message, or the pop in the office, or are we using the Teams notifications? For what audience and what is the response time? So determining those. Many organizations have replaced all of their internal emails with Teams conversations. So they have Teams set up for the all company, for each of the projects or the different departments. And they've thoughtfully, taken a step back and gone, what teams do we need? Who needs to be involved? And that is one of the, if not two of the webinars that are on Jan's YouTube channel that we did over the last 18 months. And so they have been able to, as Jan said, really move all of their internal emails into Teams. Therefore, making email is really communication from our external partners. So if you are working with an engineering firm or a marketing firm outside of your organization, that those would be the emails that would happen in, the only emails that would be coming in is from external sources. And then the Teams chat is replacing those text messages. Most of our companies are telling us that. And the nice thing about Teams is that you can still get those Teams chats on your phone by using the Teams app on your phone. But again, like I said, it is not using your text messaging, right? So it's not text messaging rates. If any of those apply, I always laugh when they put that on the commercials because it doesn't everybody have unlimited these days? But also it is not getting those business conversations intermixed with your personal friends on text messaging. And so we find that companies are really liking that option. So once you've made the determination of what you're going to use for the audience response time, create it. And the most important part of creating that communication policy or guideline, and as Jen had mentioned earlier when we were chatting, is that macro policy, right? So many companies are rolling out that macro communication policy or guideline for the company in their monthly or their quarterly meetings. But in addition to that company-wide or that macro policy, departments might be setting up something just a little bit different. They're like, no, if we're posting and we're doing this in our department team or channels, we want you to be interrupted more often and have those pop up as the banner. Or that might be, well, the company said these kinds of things make them pop up and be interruptible. And we're like, yeah, we're a little bit more relaxed. You can have everything go into your activity feed as long as you get back within 24 hours. So you may have a little bit of nuance for departments, but putting it in writing, getting it documented, and then sharing it, because if we only write it down and we don't share it with anybody, what good does it do? All right, Jan, back to you.
Awesome. Nancy, that was great. Thank you. So I'm going to just wrap up with a couple quick things and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Feel free to start entering any questions into the chat, or you can unmute yourself when you're done. So often we hear from people that they think the only thing we do is Microsoft 365. So we just always want to put a little disclaimer in here. So we help companies, we're all about productivity, and technology is just one great lever we can pull to drive productivity. We approach it not necessarily that you should start using every bell and whistle. It's really like, what are your business issues, your challenges, what's broken in your process? And if technology can help, then let's apply it. So that's the way we approach it. In addition to our consulting work, Nancy and I both do a lot of one-on-one coaching, a lot of training, all that kind of stuff, public speaking on any really topic related to productivity or helping leaders be more effective in their role. Some hot topics this year, for me in particular, have been how to run an effective meeting, certainly Microsoft 365 stuff, and project management concepts. If you look back at what Deloitte's saying, everybody really is a project manager these days. So we really need to understand those concepts and the tools that we might want to pull in and use in our day-to-day work. So those have been some trending training sessions. And perfect. So again, next month, the session's going to be eliminating information silos using Microsoft lists. So if you're interested in that, in the chat, you can find all the different links that you want. And at that point, I think we'll open it for Q&A. I think I'll just make a couple quick comments. Nancy, that was so good. And I know it's probably overwhelming, especially to people that are like, what's a channel? So again, we apologize. We have to sort of make an assumption on skill level coming into this. So go back and watch the prior webinars to understand what we're talking about there. But I love what Nancy's talking about. We often coach and say, really allow interruptions on your terms. It would be better for you to stay focused on one activity, and then when you're ready to take a break, that's when you would check, anything coming in your activity feed or check an email. All the pinging and notifications, quite honestly, is just dumb in my opinion. The only things that should be pinging and popping up in your face should be time sensitive, which is what Nancy's telling you. So that's great. The other thing that I think is interested, Arnie is on the call with us, and Arnie's going to be the one doing our webinar next week. And he taught me a different way of looking at the difference between email and Teams post. And I think it's really interesting that right now, when you're sending information out via email, it's really a push environment, and you're really pushing that information in people's faces. So you're forcing people to read low priority items just so they can get their inbox cleared out. And so even though it might feel overwhelming to have this different communication tool, it really is more it's a nicer tool because you can really set those standards and go in and read stuff when you're ready to read stuff and not be forced to. So awesome. So on that note, we'll go ahead and feel free to open up your and turn your camera on and ask a question if you have one, or enter them into chat. It's kind of a quiet group today, and that's okay. If there's no questions, we're good. But does anybody have a question?
So one of the things too that is I really like about Teams is that when you are an item gets posted into a team in a channel, and then all the replies get attached to it. So rather than them getting buried inside of your inbox, or even if you do turn on conversations, it pulls them together, they are still individual entities, where in Teams, it really does thread them and keep them all grouped together for you. So you don't have to go, I know I saw it. No, they're just all right there for you. No questions.
I can add one more thing.
I just did. I rocked. Here, I'll do a welcome.
You answered every question, Nance. I say the other thing too, that I've been learning, I can't remember if this is Nancy or Arnie, they teach me stuff every day. But the other thing is when you're doing everything within the Teams environment, the Teams search allows you to search and find. So if you can't remember, like, was that in a chat? Was that in a post? Was it in a PowerPoint? Where was it? As long as it's within the 365 Teams environment, when you use search, it's going to search all of that, which makes it just an even more powerful platform. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm always like, where did I read that? Where did I see that? I can't always remember and know to search that particular area. So.
Well, and the other thing, I'm going to take that one step further too, Jan, is that when you do search, the filters inside of Teams are much easier to use than they are inside of Outlook. Because how many people search and they get this, 250 replies, and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to scroll through. And a lot of people are not sure how to filter and keep narrowing down their email searches, which I think I covered in the Outlook one I did a couple of months ago. But I can't always remember every topic that we cover, guys, because it just, I use them and train them all the time. So you might want to look back on those too. So you can, in Outlook, you can narrow it down. It's just not right in your face as easy as it is to narrow down inside of Teams.
All right. Well, if there's no questions, we'll go ahead and head out. We'll do with Nancy and I will hang on for a few more minutes if anybody does have a question. But thank you for attending the webinar. If you have topics you'd be interested in us covering, please enter those in chat. We're always looking for advice on what you might find valuable. But thanks for your time. Again, Jan Lehman and Nancy Krushke with CTC Productivity. Appreciate you being here.